One certainty about today's world is how polluted our water can become. Nations and corporations often dump waste into our oceans and rivers, and occasionally, it becomes necessary to drain canals, lakes, and reservoirs for cleaning. During these cleanups, people often stumble upon objects far stranger than typical garbage. From century-old shipwrecks to World War II weapons found in lakes, here are 20 shocking discoveries found in drained water bodies. Number 20. World War II bomber crash site under Lake Mead's water. Resting in the murky depths of Lake Mead is a piece of American history. A B-29 Superfortress crashed during a top-secret test flight in 1948. It's now at the bottom of the Overton Arm of the country's largest reservoir. Lake Mead's smooth, glass-like surface reflected the sun back up into the cockpit. This made the pilot lose his sense of depth and crash the plane at about 230 miles per hour into the surface of the lake. 3 of the plane's 4 engines were ripped off by the impact, and the plane skidded across the surface like a flat stone. After about a half-mile, when it finally stopped skipping, it began to sink. After the crash, somehow neither the pilot nor the crew were seriously hurt, and everyone was able to escape the sinking plane on life rafts. After the wreck was found, the NPS used a remote-controlled submersible to check on its condition and send divers down to the site to do another check. When it went down in 1948, the wreckage was about 300 feet underwater. Since then, the lake has been going down, but the dive is still tricky. It's about 110 feet below the surface right now, but it may soon be entirely visible. Number 19. Underwater ghost town, Old Bluffton. In the mid-1800s, stagecoaches stopped in Old Bluffton, which is about an hour's drive north of Austin, Texas. One of the first towns in the Texas Hill Country, it had 50 families and a lot of pecan orchards and cornfields. But all of that was before it became a ghost town, sitting deep underwater. When the New Deal was put into place in the early 1930s, one of the projects to be finished was the Buchanan Dam, which brought electricity to the hill country. Families slowly started to get ready for the rising water by selling their land to the Lower Colorado River Authority. Officials thought that it would take years for the lake to form after the dam was finished in 1937. However, a flood and more than 20 inches of rain caused the lake to fill up in just a few months. Some people weren't able to leave the area completely before the water came in and covered Old Bluffton. The ruins of Old Bluffton are now covered by the huge man-made Lake Buchanan, which is typically about 30 feet deep. A new Bluffton was built 7 miles west of its watery predecessor. As of 2001, there's only 269 people living in this tiny, unincorporated community in Llano County. Most people just forgot about Old Bluffton until 1948, when a drought hit Texas. As the water in Lake Buchanan went down, old parts of Old Bluffton became visible once more in a spooky reawakening of the old town. Many parts of the town were, in fact, preserved by the water. Tourists came to the site to see tombstones and graveyards, the remains of a cotton gin, homes, a local bank, a hotel, and just how they all were back in the 19th century. Number 18. Weapons of Muk Destruction found in Echo Park Lake Drain. Back in 2012, a collection of soggy weapons was put on display in a meeting about the progress of a project to fix up Echo Park Lake. Even though it wasn't clear how long the guns had been underwater, at least one rifle was thought to be from World War II. During the lake drain, no bodies, or indeed heads without bodies, came to the surface, thankfully. Instead, the silt turned up a bunch of old and relatively boring things. Like the infamous La Brea tar pits, the lake bottom held modern fossils like payphones, toys, shopping carts, hubcaps, traffic cones, a toilet, and hundreds of glass bottles from decades earlier. Echo Park Lake was cleaned up with $65 million in budget, and wetlands around the area were redeveloped as part of the process. The project to improve the water quality was finished in May of 2013. Since then, the historic Echo Park Lake on the east side has finally become a place where families can go and enjoy the dramatic view of the downtown skyline against the lotus flower blooms and fountains. Number 17. Shrinking water levels at Lake Powell reveal natural wonders hidden for decades. Some people call it Glen Canyon, the national park that America forgot. Seeing the cathedral in the desert for the first time is likely to make anyone feel pretty awestruck. It's a kind of big slot canyon, but instead of being narrow from top to bottom, it opens into a huge cavern on the canyon floor. A small peaceful pool is formed by a waterfall that flows over a sandstone shelf, just adding to the ambience here. It's a quiet, sacred space that could easily remind you of a man-made cathedral. It was once thought that cathedral in the desert and other natural wonders in Glen Canyon would never be seen again. Back in 1963, the Glen Canyon Dam was built. The Colorado River then started to back up behind the dam. Over the course of 16 years, as the newly formed Lake Powell got higher and higher, these natural wonders went further under the water. Many of the waterfalls, alcoves, and other places in Glen Canyon were submerged. However, due to record-breaking drought in the American West, these places are starting to come back to light once more. Now that water levels are so low, these natural features that used to be underwater can be seen again in many places. So, if you're in the area, this is definitely one natural wonder to check out. Number 16. Pistols and a knife found at the bottom of a drained Tempe Town lake. In 2016, the Tempe Town lake in Arizona was drained, and police reported that they found a number of weapons at the bottom when the lake bed was finally dry. Police said they found a knife, 3 pistols, one of which had been stolen, and a piece of another pistol. Officers said that they were looking into the guns to see if they had been used in any other crimes. The lake was drained in March of that year to help finish building a new steel gate dam. It opens and closes with water pressure instead of an inflatable rubber system. The second most popular place to go in Arizona is, in fact, the Tempe Town Lake. The lake is more than 2 miles long, and it was made by putting a dam across the dry part of the Salt River and filling it with water. The Tempe Town Lake is in the middle of Tempe, and along its edges, a network of paths let people walk, jog, bike, and do other fun stuff. It's also a great place for boats that are run by electricity, wind, or by old-fashioned or power. Number 15. North Dakota drought exposes 130-year-old shipwreck. In 1892, as the Abner O'Neill was going down the Missouri River, it sank. Nearly 130 years later, the shipwreck is still at the bottom of the river in North Dakota. An archaeologist recently found the ship's remains when the water level went down. The steamship was built in 1884, and it took grain from Washburn to Bismarck-Mandan. Incredibly, despite the passage of time, the structure of the boat has remained largely preserved beneath the murky waters, offering a rare glimpse into the region's past. The river's silted bottom likely helped to protect the wooden frame from significant decay, keeping this historic vessel in remarkably good shape. 8 years later, the Abner O'Neill was carrying 9,000 bushels of buckwheat between Washburn and Mandan when it hit a snag or a rock and started to sink. The website of the State Historical Society of North Dakota says that the boat and everything on it were lost. Since its sinking, the ship has remarkably stayed mostly intact, making this a pretty epic time capsule. The discovery of the Abner O'Neill offers historians and archaeologists a unique opportunity to study steamship travel and trade on the Missouri River during the late 19th century. Number 14. Frederick Pond being drained in Anthrax case investigation. Now we're going back to 2001 and the mysterious anthrax scare that happened then. In 2003, the Postal Inspection Service began draining a pond in the Frederick City watershed. Investigators thought that the pond might hold clues about a series of letters filled with anthrax that killed 5 people and injured 17 others in 2001. The 2001 anthrax attacks, also called Amerithrax, happened in the U.S. over the course of several weeks, starting on September 18, 2001, 1 week after the September 11 terrorist attacks. Anthrax spores were sent in the mail to several news media offices and to Democratic Senators Tom Dashley and Patrick Leahy. The FBI says that the investigation that followed was one of the largest and most complex in the history of law enforcement. In the early years of the investigation, bioweapons expert Stephen Hatfill was a big focus of interest and considered a prime suspect, but in the end, he was cleared. Around April 4, 2005, Bruce Edward Ivins, a scientist at the government's biodefense labs at Fort Detrick in Frederick, Maryland, came into the spotlight. Ivins was put under regular FBI surveillance on April 11, 2007, and an FBI document says that he was an extremely sensitive suspect in the 2001 anthrax attacks. Ivins overdosed on Tylenol and killed himself on July 29, 2008. However, the FBI then finished their report and put all the blame on him, all of which seems very real and not weird or fishy in any way. Number 13. Anasazi ruins at Lake Powell. About 170 million years ago, dinosaurs lived in a low, flat area where rivers and small lakes provided water. Over time, sediment covered the bones and tracks of these animals. This sediment later turned into rock, and in some places fossils formed, giving us a record of how big lizards lived back then. At the same time, strong forces from inside the earth pushed the area up, making a high plateau. As this dramatic shift occurred, many of the dinosaur tracks were preserved, allowing them to endure for millions of years, hidden beneath layers of sediment. Erosion played a significant role in revealing these treasures, as wind and water slowly chipped away at the land. As the land rose, the constantly flowing river cut deep, rough canyons like the Grand Canyon and the nearby Glen Canyon, where Lake Powell is now. In the historic canyons of the Escalante arm of the lake, both dinosaur tracks and Anasazi homes have been found. These incredible finds highlight the intertwining stories of prehistoric creatures and ancient human civilizations, creating a rich tapestry of history in one place. As the lake level slowly rose, the National Park Service used a famous old boat called the Alicia M to save and protect the fragile dinosaur footprints as well as the Anasazi ruins, both of which add something very special to this mysterious and ancient place. Number 12. Hidden treasures of Paris Canal Saint-Martin discovered. Napoleon ordered the Canal Saint-Martin in Paris to be finished in 1825 so that the growing French capital would have more disease-free drinking water. It hasn't been cleaned since 2001. Since then, two big changes have happened near the canal of the 10th arrondissement of Paris. The first was the influx of many new restaurants, cafes, bars, and tourists in the area. The second was the start of the city's main bike-sharing service, which has more than 20,000 public bikes and 1,800 stations. This reveals a lot about the trash that was found at the bottom of the Canal Saint-Martin when it was cleaned recently. There were a lot of abandoned vela, bikes, and a lot of dirty wine and beer bottles and cans from the new nightlife by the canal. There were also shopping carts, motorbikes, chairs, radios, public trash cans, rolled-up carpets, a fire extinguisher, a baby stroller, umbrellas, street signs, suitcases, and at least one gun, which police were luckily there to collect. Even more interesting souvenirs were found in 2001, such as a toilet bowl, a bathtub, gold coins, a car, and 2 shells from World War I. Number 11. Europe's drought exposes World War II ships, bombs, and prehistoric stones. In Europe, in the summer of 2022, weeks of hot, dry weather caused the water level in rivers and lakes to drop to levels lower than most people remember. This brought to the surface long-buried treasures and some unwanted dangers. In Spain, which went through its worst drought in decades, a prehistoric stone circle called the Spanish Stonehenge, usually covered by the water of a dam, was revealed. At least this made archaeologists very happy, but it's not so good for thirsty people or anybody who wants or needs water to survive. The stone circle is called the Dolmen of Guadalperol, and it's fully exposed in one corner of the Valdecañas Reservoir in the central province of Cáceres, where the water level dropped to 28% of its capacity, according to the authorities. It was found in 1926 by the German archaeologist Hugo Obermeier, but the area was flooded in 1963 as part of a project to improve rural areas while Francisco Franco was in power. The drought also caused the Danube, another big river in Europe, to drop to one of its lowest levels in almost a century. This has exposed the wrecks of more than 20 German warships that sank during World War II near the Serbian riverport town of Prhovo. The ships were among hundreds that Nazi Germany's Black Sea Fleet sunk along the Danube in 1944 as they ran away from advancing Soviet forces. They still get in the way of river traffic today when the water is low enough, so these could actually pose a major problem for shipping in the future. Number 10. Mormon Island once again visible in Folsom Lake. 2 months after James Marshall found gold in Coloma and started the gold rush, 3 Mormon miners found even more gold 25 miles east of Sacramento on the American River. After them, more prospectors came, a lot of them were Mormon, and they started a town that did pretty well during the gold rush. At its peak, there were 2,500 people living on Mormon Island. It was a stop on the stage line between Sacramento and Coloma. There were 4 hotels, 7 saloons, a winery, a post office, a school, a cemetery, and a lot of shops. One of these shops was run by Sam Brannan, who became the first millionaire in California and is credited with spreading the word about the discovery of gold. He later became a senator in the state. But the good times didn't last long. Soon, the newly built Sacramento Valley Railroad reached nearby Granite City, which is now called Folsom, and people just stopped moving there. After most of the city burned down in a fire in 1856, just 8 years after it was founded, it was never rebuilt. When Folsom Dam was built in 1955, Folsom Lake filled in what was left of the town. When the lake is low because of a dry year, many of the town's ruins are exposed and can be seen for free. As of January of 2014, the lake was at its lowest level in 37 years. That means that many, but not all, of the ruins in the town can be seen again, a reminder of the great gold rush that made California what it is today. Number 9. Hamstead Heath Pond draining reveals classic Ford Cortina. No one knows how this classic car ended up at the bottom of a pond, where it might have been resting for years. When this model boating pond was drained, everyone was shocked to see that a Ford Cortina emerged out of the water. The rusty, muddy car looks like it's got one broken window, but the rest of the glass is in place. Some witnesses said that they thought the car had been underwater for at least 25 years. As part of a new project to protect the area from flooding, the pond was temporarily drained. Since 1989, the pond has been run by the City of London Corporation, but no one knows where the car came from. The find was reported to police in case it could be used as proof of a crime. Ron Vester, a photographer who works to protect wildlife, managed to get some snaps. He said at the time, "I was watching the pond receding and I started seeing the rim of something. I thought it was a model boat, but it turned out to be a roof of a Ford Cortina Mark II, I believe." He also said, "You can see one of its windows is broke and there's nothing inside of it." Well, I'm glad that most of the window is still there, but I'm guessing it won't turn on the first time you try. Number 8. Columbia tank found on lake bed. Now we move on to the ghostly remains of the last great space exploration tragedy. An aluminum tank from the STS-107 mission of the Space Shuttle Columbia was found on the shore of Lake Nacogdoches in East Texas in 2001. The tank and other parts of the Columbia debris will likely be made available to researchers in the future once any investigations have been completed. During Columbia's 16-day mission, it carried 18 cryogenic tanks, of which this sphere was one. It had been underwater for the previous 8.5 years, having landed there on February 1, 2003, when the shuttle broke up over East Texas during re-entry. It was found when the lake's water level dropped about 11 feet because of a drought at the time. NASA said that the tank doesn't hold anything dangerous, but it might have sharp edges. Pro tip: always wear gloves when digging for random space shuttle debris. In space, the supercold chemicals stored in these tanks powered the shuttle's fuel cells, which made electricity for the spacecraft. All of the shuttles had several tanks built into their fuselages, and Columbia had an extra set in its payload bay so it could stay in space longer than usual for the research flight. During recovery operations, teams found more than 84,000 pieces of the shuttle. This is about 40% of the shuttle recovered, which is pretty impressive. A lot of the wreckage was found near Nacogdoches, and the search continues to this very day. Number 7. Dinosaur tracks revealed in Texas as severe drought dries up river. Dinosaur Valley State Park in Texas has recently found amazing dinosaur tracks that are 113 million years old. Until now, the Paluxy River had covered the dino prints. In fact, the last time that they could be seen was in the year 2000. But lately, the river dried up completely, which made it possible to find even more tracks in the park. These newly uncovered prints add a significant layer to the already impressive collection of dinosaur tracks at the park, making it a goldmine for paleontologists and dino enthusiasts alike. The dry conditions have allowed researchers to document and study these tracks in far greater detail, giving us a clearer picture of what life was like in the early Cretaceous period. When the river's at a normal level, these newer tracks are underwater and filled with sediment, so they aren't as visible. Most of the tracks were made by Acrocanthosaurus, a meat-eating dinosaur that lived between 115 and 105 million years ago during the early Cretaceous period. These dinosaurs had 3 clawed toes on each foot and walked on 2 legs. They were about 15 feet tall and could weigh up to 7 tons. That's a big lizard. The tracks are called the Lone Ranger Trackway, and there's about 140 of them from this one pretty scary-looking species. These newly revealed tracks have provided a rare glimpse into the movement and behavior of one of history's most fearsome predators, deepening our understanding of the prehistoric world. Number 6. Underwater railway tracks and submerged forest revealed by draining operation on 100-year-old Washington Reservoir. These are the secrets that a large lake outside of Seattle, Washington, that's more than a mile wide has kept hidden for over a century. When Lake Tapps was filled in 1911 to power a hydroelectric dam, it ate up 4.5 square miles of land, including an old railroad track and parts of a forest. We can also see the trash that's ended up in the lake, which is now used for recreation. The lake was drained so the nearby dam, which had a crack in it, wouldn't break. The lake was made when the Puget Sound Energy Company put water in the area to make electricity. Since 2009, when it stopped making electricity, it's been used for fishing, boating, and other water-based activities. One of the things that it hid was an amazing underwater forest. These tree trunks have been sitting in the water for 104 years since the lake was flooded. A pretty amazing graveyard for a forgotten forest. Number 5. Drought exposes Roman ruins in Tyber River. In 2022, Italy had its worst drought in 70 years, which revealed the piers of an old bridge over the Tyber River that was used by Roman emperors but had fallen into disrepair by the 3rd century. During most of the summer, you could see 2 piers of Nero's Bridge near the Vittorio Emanuele Bridge that crossed the river near the Vatican. These piers are now a pile of moss-covered rocks where seagulls like to sunbathe. Historian Anthony Maggiolotti says the bridge was built in the 1st century, so the Emperor Nero could get to his gardens on Janiculum Hill near what's now St. Peter's Square. By the end of the 3rd century, the bridge had already fallen apart, so people started using the nearby St. Angelo Bridge instead. This led pilgrims past the Castel Sant'Angelo to the Vatican. Experts think that Nero's bridge used to have 4 piers, But Majanladi says that 2 of them were taken down in the 19th century so that river traffic could move more quickly. This is another reminder of the endless archaeological treasures of Rome. Number 4. Hidden Wonder of India, 1,000 Shiva Linga carvings in the river Sahasralinga, Karnataka. This place is one of the most important pilgrimage sites in the whole of India. It's in the town of Sirsi, in the middle of the river Shilmala, to be precise. Along the banks of the Shilmala River, there are over 1,000 Shiva Lingas carved into the rock. From what we know about local history, King Satashivaraya of the Vijayanagar kingdom put up to 1,000 lingas between 1678 and 1718. What makes these different is that each one has a carving of Nandi, the bull, right in front. On Mahashivaratri, a religious holiday, people from all over the country come to this place to worship these amazing carvings. When you see so many lingas playing hide and seek with the river water, the place looks both mysterious and beautiful at the same time. The sizes and shapes of these lingas are all different due to the force of the river water. Some of these lingas have worn away, while others have been carried away by the current or have just been completely ruined. If you want to see this miracle, then you should only go to the spot when the water level is low. Otherwise, the lingas can't be seen. Number 3. Drought reveals ancient Stonehenge-like monument in Ireland. In 2018, Ireland had the worst drought on record, which made it possible to see a monument that had been hidden for centuries. Because of the lack of rain, the Irish fields were drying up. But an unexpected result of this was that the shapes of old monuments could be seen again. This is because the monument's foundations hold more water and are better at keeping plants alive in hot weather, so the grass above them stays green while everything else around them turns brown. Archaeologists were stunned by the clear outlines that suddenly appeared in the parched fields, offering them a rare glimpse into ancient history without having to dig. The monument discovered was a large circular structure, a henge, which has a similar purpose to the famous Stonehenge in Wiltshire, England. The patterns of the building showed that it was about 40 meters across, with evidence suggesting it may have been used for ceremonies or gatherings. Newgrange, a passage tomb with intricate carvings that was once used for burials and worship, is now one of the most popular tourist spots in the country and also in the area. Get this, it's older than both Stonehenge and the pyramids of Giza. It was built about 5,200 years ago. These newly discovered structures only add to the intrigue surrounding Ireland's ancient history, showing that there's still so much more to uncover. Number 2. Bombay Beach Town. Before the 1980s, Bombay Beach was a popular place for beachgoers to visit. However, as the Salton Sea dried up and became saltier, it destroyed the ecosystem of the lake and drove businesses and private landowners out of the area, turning Bombay Beach into a total ghost town. Over time, the remaining structures became weathered relics of a more vibrant past, adding an eerie beauty to the abandoned landscape. Yet, despite its desolate reputation, the town has gained new life as a quirky artistic haven. By 2018, a number of people had moved into the area, and the town's many abandoned buildings and other reminders of its past have brought people back again. Artists, creators, and those seeking an offbeat adventure now flock to the once-abandoned beach, using its ghostly remnants as backdrops for installations and festivals. Since the only gas station is 20 miles away in Mecca, most of the few people that live there use golf carts to get around. The Bombay Beach Drive-In is an art installation made up of old abandoned cars in a drive-in theater, so it looks like Bombay is back and it's a hip place to be again. Its surreal, post-apocalyptic vibe has transformed it from a forgotten ghost town into a unique artistic hub. Number 1. Longyu Caves in China. Longyu Caves are a group of 24 man-made caves that are built into the sandstone of Fenghuang Hill in the province of Zhejiang, China. Farmers in the area accidentally found the caves in 1992 when they drained some ponds and found 5 large man-made caverns and 19 smaller caves. The 5 separate caverns range in length from 18 to 34 meters, and they reach heights of up to 20 meters. They're held up by pillars and have unique curved shapes that were made by shaping the cavern walls as ceilings. After the news of the discovery spread across China, it was first thought that the caves were a rare natural wonder because their design and formation were so different from any other ancient caves, quarries, mines, or even ceremonial caverns built in China in the past. After more research, it was found that each complete cavern only has one entrance, which is a vertical shaft with a carved staircase that lets rainwater and surface runoff into the caverns in order to collect the water. A system of drainage troughs, draining channels, and a water trap were cut into the base of the cavern. As soon as they were found, archaeologists and academics have been trying to figure out who made the Long U caves, when they were made, and why. Archaeologists have found glazed clay pots in the silt in the floor in the cave. These pots were made during the Western Han Dynasty, which lasted from 206 BC to AD 23, and this means that the caves were built before this time, probably around 2,000 years ago. But the inhabitants remain very mysterious to this day. Who could these cave people have been? What other treasures might be hidden beneath our lakes and canals? Have you ever discovered something interesting in a body of water? Share your finds in the comments below. Also, be sure to check out our other exciting content appearing on the screen right now. See you in the next video.